In breaking news today, the Los Angeles Times newsroom guild leaders called for a one-day walkout Friday to protest planned cuts to offset steep financial losses that owner Dr. Patrick Soncione and his family have absorbed since acquiring the paper nearly 6 years ago. Now, the Times disclosed today that substantial layoffs were coming due to a widening budget deficit. The walkout represents the newsroom's first union organized work stoppage in the paper's 142-year history. And in other news, Fonnie T. Willis, the district attorney prosecuting the Georgia election interference case against former President Donald Trump, is trying to quash a subpoena seeking her testimony in the divorce proceedings of a special prosecutor she hired to manage the case. A court filing last week accused Willis of having a romantic relationship with the prosecutor, Nathan Wade. And an exchange between the lawyers in that criminal case against Trump grew testy last week, with Fonnie Willis telling the defense attorneys in an email that some people will never be able to respect African Americans. The email exchange, portions of which were obtained by the media, unfolded in the days before and after a co-defendant of Trump's accused Willis of being in that romantic relationship and of benefiting from money that was paid to his firm for legal fees. The emails suggest that even before the explosive allegations emerged, conversations between the two sides were becoming strained. The judge in that case has set February 15th as a date by which Fonnie Willis must respond to the allegations made by the defendants regarding a romantic relationship with Nathan Wade and money paid to Wade's firm and monies that may have somehow benefited Fonnie Willis. I'm going to keep watching that case and see what happens. And the Senate today passed a bill to avert a partial government shutdown as Congress raced one day before its spending deadline to send Biden stopgap legislation to fund federal agencies through early March. The 77-18 vote cleared the way for a vote in the House, which would provide lawmakers more time to pass spending bills totaling $1.66 trillion to fund the government through the fall. And Nikki Haley's presidential aspirations may hang on a victory in the New Hampshire primary, which is set for next Tuesday. She's hoping that independents in the state will be the winning ticket for her. Now, 40% of voters in New Hampshire call themselves independents, but some pundits say the problem with this plan is those independent voters come in all shapes and stripes, and many of them aren't that into Nikki Haley. And with only 5 days left before that New Hampshire primary, Donald Trump and his allies are stepping up their efforts to muscle Haley and Ron DeSantis out of the Republican presidential race. They're doing so by casting Trump as the inevitable nominee. Now, this strategy is a part of an urgent desire by the Trump team to end the race and to end the money he's expending on a battle fighting Haley and DeSantis. Trump wants to put all of his efforts and focus on the general election and fighting Joe Biden. And in some good news today, Spelman College, the women's school in Atlanta, announced today that it had received a $100 million donation. The school says this is the largest ever single gift to a historically Black college. Now, this gift comes from Rhonda Stryker. She is a trustee of Spelman, and her husband, William Johnston, is the chairman of the wealth management company Greenleaf Trust, that is. Ms. Stryker serves as director of the medical equipment company Stryker Corporation, which was founded by her grandfather. Way to go, Spelman College. What an amazing gift for a historically Black college. This is Areva Martin in real time, and I'm your host, Areva Martin. This is your one-stop destination for today's trending news, expert analysis, and my unfiltered opinions. This is hour 2 of Areva Martin in real time, and this is the hour where we go behind the headlines, where we dig a little deeper And we bring you the stories that people are talking about, and we bring you the people that have those facts that you may not have heard about regarding those stories. And today we're talking about a really troubling story out of Lincoln University. Now, Lincoln University is in my home state of Missouri. And a week ago or so, we started to hear these stories about allegations of bullying and harassment against the Lincoln University president. His name is John Mosley. Now, these allegations are quite troubling. And what's even more troubling is the fact that they were made by the former VP of Student Affairs. Her name is Antoinette Candia Bailey, but she was known by her friends and colleagues as Bonnie. Unfortunately, Bonnie committed suicide last week, and she left some indication that her suicide was directly tied to the mistreatment that she received by President John Mosley. Now, the president of Lincoln University's Alumni Association and others are demanding that President Mosley resign immediately. They say he cannot remain in a position of leadership given the allegations against him and given the troubling suicide of Miss Bailey, Candia Bailey. Now, Miss Bailey, Candia Bailey, lost her life on January 8th. She was only 49 years old. In a letter provided that was verified by a Lincoln alumni, Miss Candia Bailey documented the president's abhorrent leadership style. She also detailed several alleged policy violations by this president, and she urged the school to take a closer look at this president and some of the conduct that he was engaged in. And in the letter, she blamed his behavior. She blamed the president's behavior as the driving force behind her suicide. When we come forward, we're going to talk to the president of the Lincoln University Alumni Association that is out front calling for the resignation of this president. And we're also going to talk to the former president of Bennett College about the pressures that someone like Miss Candia Bailey may have been under as a VP of Student Affairs, and what it means for a president of a university to be linked to the suicide of one of his employees. Stay with us. KBLA Talk 1580.
Listening to Areva Martin in real time on KBLA Talk 1580.
August 24th, 2023, Joan created for eBay. Ad ID EBPA02650000. Spot title, Are We There Yet? 30 seconds, radio full mix.
eBay Motors is here for the ride. 120,000 miles of night drives, daily commutes, and who knows how many.
Are we there yet?
Through countless fixes, elbow grease, and a new radiator, you kept your ride alive. With eBay Motors, you have over 122 million parts to keep it running. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, they'll be the perfect fit every time. Plus, at these prices, well, we're burning rubber, not cash. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply.
She's so smooth. So
I'm interrupting my own shower to remind you to treat your skin like the queen she is with Olay Hyaluronic Body Wash, packed with Olay's highest level of vitamin B3 complex. It's so moisturizing that it will give you visibly smoother, head-turning skin in just 14 days. People wondering, how'd she get so smooth? Olay Hyaluronic Body Wash. Also, try Olay Hyaluronic Body Lotion.
KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA Talk 1580, connecting you with services and solutions. Legal Aid Foundation of Los Angeles is a nonprofit law firm that protects and advances the rights of the most underserved, leveling the playing field and ensuring that everyone can have access to the justice system. Every year, LAFLA provides free, high-quality legal services to more than 100,000 people living in poverty across greater Los Angeles. Their unique combination of neighborhood offices, self-help centers at courthouses, Services and Domestic Violence Clinics puts Legal Aid Foundation of Los Angeles on the front lines in vulnerable communities and at the forefront of change. LAFLA's expert team of attorneys, paralegals, and support staff works to provide direct representation, offer counsel and advice, provide referrals, and educate the community about their legal rights through workshops and seminars. Located all over LA, you can access their services or volunteer to help no matter where you live. And if you have an urgent issue, call 213-235-0060. That's 213-235-0060. To get legal help, make a donation, or volunteer, visit LAFLA.org. LAFLA.org. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
We are back, and Sherman Bond, the president of Lincoln University's Alumni Association, who has called for the resignation of the university president over bullying, is joining me. And also in this hour, Dr. Julianne Malvo, the former president of Bennett College, is going to join this conversation. Thank you so much, Mr. Bond, Sherman, for joining us. This is such a troubling story. I grew up in St. Louis, Missouri. I know Lincoln University very well. So when I first read about this story, I was just shocked. People started sending it to me because they know that I'm from the St. Louis community. So tell us what happened with Miss Candia Bond. People call her Bonnie. Tell us the story.
Well,
I'm sorry, her name is Candia Bailey. Let me just correct that. So tell us what happened with her.
Dr. Bailey, what I received, I'm trying to see if I got something here in my chat. Everybody hear me clear?
Yes, sir. We can hear you.
Okay. All right. I received a letter from an associate who informed me, was sharing the information. And I think I got that letter on the 8th of January, and between the hours of 11 and 1. And I began to read it. And it was a very lengthy letter, but it was about a relationship that had gone bad at the university, and she had been terminated. Now, I knew there was some discussion about termination, but on that day, that was evidence that she had actually experienced termination, because sometimes you hear termination and you want to know if that word is really being used properly, because she had only been at the university for a little bit around 7, 8 months, I think, when I was there for commencements in May of 23. She was not on campus, but she had been hired, and she was in transition to.
So just to be clear, Sherman, this letter that you are talking about was a letter from Dr. Bailey?
Yeah.
Okay. Just wanted to be clear about that.
The letter was from Dr. Bailey to expressing her thoughts, and she was sharing that information with a number of AKAs, as well as to Dr. Mosley, and it was about, the letter in itself described specifics that her sorrows were to take from her apartment and that she had left. So I hadn't really got it that at that point that it was a suicide letter. I was kind of maybe thinking that she had left and she was asking them to, take her things, until I got to halfway through the letter. And while I got halfway through the letter, I received a text from an associate that she had committed suicide.
Wow.
And I went home and completely engulfed myself in the writings that was there. And I drew the conclusion
Let me stop you, Mr. Bond. What day, we know that Dr. Bailey committed suicide on January 8th. What day did you receive this letter?
January 8th. I mean, we're in real time.
Real time.
Yeah.
Did you receive it by mail or how did you
No,
get
no,
it?
I received an email. It was forwarded to me.
Okay. And it was forwarded to you by one of her AKA sisters?
Forwarded to me by another associate that had put confidence in her to share it as with many as people as possible.
Wow. So Dr. Bailey sent the letter to someone and said, share this letter widely.
Yeah, yeah, it's out there. It wasn't. It's just not. It didn't come to me. It went to it went to a number of sources. My understanding.
What are some of the allegations in the letter against the president?
You have not seen the letter?
I've not seen the letter. My producer's pulling it up now, but I will see it in the midst of this conversation. But no, I had not seen
I
it.
apologize. I apologize, but I just thought everybody had seen the letter. The letter has so many allegations in there. I saw the letter though, which was alarming to me. Not as much as all the allegations about her mental health, about her anxieties, about the call for support. I think the way I received and interpret the writings was that it was also a compassionate letter to him. And I'm talking about Dr. Mosley, about some leadership skills that he needed to develop as an administrator. The overwhelming impact is that she's a 28-year scholar who's coming home to her alma mater to lend her skills. And she's a graduate. She goes on, earns a terminal degree, works at a number of universities to achieve other accolades, and she comes home. And in a 7-month period, she's getting a 33 out of 100. She's being terminated, and it is overwhelming that all of the scholars that came, that educated her, that taught her, in this short time, this man, Dr. Mosley, just disregards all of that and lays at her feet a termination letter. And I think that could be interpreted by anyone to be extremely devastating. But I thought her compassion to engage thoughtfulness in terms of areas in which he could improve was very eye-opening. And I just felt that from after I digested that evening and January the 9th, I wrote a letter to Victor Pasley and the Board of Curators expressing deep concern and that felt that the institution was in mourning, both faculty and students and alumni, and that this was a breach and of trust and concern, and what she describes is that it was very disheartening eviction notice and with a certain amount of time, because she was in transition and she was living in a suite in one of the dormitories. And so receiving all of that, and I just said, well, wait a minute, hold on. When this, and I know for a fact that the previous vice president was separated from the university that was in that position, and she was a very short timer. And then the first provost that he hired, Dr. Self, for academic affairs, was also a short time. When I say short time, shorter than a year. Mm-hmm. There's 3 African-American scholars with terminal degrees that this man that I know in the 2.5 years ago, because I'm 2.5 years into my presidency as the alumni, graduated from Mizzou, where he earned a terminal degree. And in that summer, he was offered the interim position of president He was formerly the athletic director and basketball coach. And then he was thrusted 9 months later into the presidency. And we wrote, the alumni wrote very compassionate letter about him being a novice, about his skills.
Wait a minute, let me stop you for a second. So, Mr. Brown, you said John Mosley graduated from Mizzou. When did he graduate?
Well, whatever the year is, 2.5 years ago.
So this is a man that's 30 years old or less than 30?
No, I don't know how. I don't know his age.
47. He's 47 years old.
Okay, he's 47.
Yeah.
Dr. Malvo, jump in here. So, what do you know about John Mosley?
I don't know why a white man was a president of an HBCU. Let me start with that. Secondly, his background seems to have been an athletic coach. Do you hear the disdain in my voice when I say athletic coach? Now, you and I know each other well. You know, I'm not into athletics. So that's A. But B, what then qualifies you to be an academic leader? I don't know what the selection committee was doing to bring that man up in there. But as the brother has just laid out with all the short-termers that he's hired, he obviously had very poor executive skills, obviously very poor leadership skills, and it shows up. Beyond that, Areva, this case breaks my heart. You know, I've spent my time in HBCU land at the highest leadership position as a president. I can't imagine a president harassing a subordinate. If you can't get along, there's so many things you can do to creatively move them around, to have them report to the provost, to do something else. They obviously didn't get along. But this was also exacerbated. Sister had just moved. She hadn't been there a year. She probably felt a little bit isolated, and that perhaps added to her anxiety and depression. In addition, I think that when you think about the position she was in, she was being penalized. I was looking at some of her termination. They terminated her because she had a student. One thing, she had a student illegally working in a work-study position. Secondly, she had a student who had a discounted housing rate in a dormitory. That's among the, now, when I look at that, what I say is, this is a sister who cared about students. If a student was in a work-study position that wasn't supposed to be there, that student needed money. And she was trying to figure out how to get that young person some money. If a student was in, you know, when I was at Bennett, I did all kind of illegal stuff. I don't think the statute of limitations is over yet. But I remember a point in time where I had 2 homeless girls and I just moved them into the dorm. I happened to be at a mall. I saw 2 of my students sleeping in the car. I said, why are y'all sleeping in the car? We don't have any money. I knew there were vacancies. Let's come on back. Now somebody did halfway bust my chops, but when you're the HGIC, her head girl in charge, you have that kind of leeway. So it seems to me, as I read this case, that sister had real compassion for students. My brother, I
think you're right, because if
I could just say something to the chair of the board of curators, I have to say this to you while we're here together. I'm profoundly disappointed that you didn't have her back. I really am.
He's not the board. He's not the chair of the board of curators. He is the president of the Alumni Association, who himself was troubled by the fact that this president had fired 3 African-American hires. Mr. Sherman Bond he's got the back of Dr. Bailey.
Forgive me. I'm just really profoundly disappointed by the whole thing, and disappointed by the fact that a white man would be put in a leadership position at an HBCU without the kind of cultural immersion that he clearly needed, because you just can't go around firing people like that. I mean, I literally, when I read this, I got you and I, all of us who kind of halfway out in the public eye, people reached out to us and say, did you know about this? Did you hear about this? And I cried. I cried because student affairs is one of the hardest jobs to have on a campus. It really is, especially on an HBCU campus where you have students who have so many needs, and it pulls at your heartstrings. My accountant told me after 6 months at Bennett, he said, leave your checkbook at home. Because anytime a student have a need, we couldn't do it institutionally. I said, okay, let me just give you a few pennies to kind of tide you over. Leave your checkbook at home. But
our
students have so enormous needs, and and she was trying to meet them, and this collided with her own personal stuff. And this president is inhumane. Inhumane.
Yeah.
He should not be allowed to put his foot back on that campus.
Hold that thought, Dr. Malvo, because we have gotten a copy of the letter, and there are some horrifying statements in this letter from Dr. Bailey. When we come forward, want to talk about the allegations in the letter against the president and answer the question, Mr. Bond, why was this white man the president of this HBCU? The question that Dr. Malvo has raised. Stay with us, KBLA Talk 1580.
Right time. More of Areva Martin when we come forward.
I'm Amber Payton. Here's the latest on the Black Information Network. A bill to restore closed primary elections to Louisiana is on its way to the state Senate after passing the House. The special session now in progress was called mainly for congressional redistricting, but Governor Jeff Landry wanted lawmakers to deal with the party-based closed primary issue as well, and the bill passed by a 64-40 vote. The bill now goes to the Senate, which has already given its approval to a congressional redistricting map with 2 majority Black districts instead of only 1. Hawaii Attorney General Ann Lopez is calling for a federal ban on the sale of menthol cigarettes and flavored cigars. Lopez was among 21 AGs that sent a letter to the Biden administration. They're urging the administration to finalize its review of proposed rules that would ban the sale of controversial products. Supporters say prohibiting the sale of menthol cigarettes and flavored cigars would save lives, particularly the lives of young people and racial and ethnic minorities like Black Americans. That's the latest. I'm Amber Payton on your home for 24/7 News, the Black Information Network.
Drive carefully through Culver City as an accident remains on the right shoulder of the 405 south before Highway 90. Right now, stop traffic continues up to 30 minutes from Wilshire Boulevard. In Lincoln Heights, an accident's been reported on the right shoulder of the 5 south at Broadway. And right now, heavy traffic is coming from Griffith Park Drive. Hit the brakes over in Encino and watch for a stall on the right shoulder of the 101 south after Haskell Avenue. It's slowing from Balboa Boulevard. And in Tustin, 2 right lanes are currently blocked due to an accident on the 5 south before Highway 55. Right now, stop delays are coming from Highway 22, Bristol Street interchange over 45 minutes.
New year, new hiring needs? Indeed's end-to-end solution helps you attract, interview, and hire candidates all year round. Schedule and conduct virtual interviews right from your Indeed dashboard. Learn more by visiting Indeed.com/credit.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
If you're an alumni of Southern University and Grambling, a date has been confirmed for the annual Bayou Classic. The 2 HBCU schools will play each other on November 30th in the New Orleans Superdome. The festive college football game attracts alumni from around the country, not just from Southern and Grambling, but from many other HBCU schools as well. This will be the 51st Bayou Classic. If you're not able to get to New Orleans, the game will be televised live on NBC. Pittsburgh's Mike Tomlin, the dean of Black head coaches in the NFL, said he's returning for an 18th season with the Steelers. After the Steelers lost their playoff game at Buffalo on Tuesday, there were concerns that Tomlin would walk away and look for other opportunities. Tomlin's run in Pittsburgh is the longest of any Black head coach in the NFL. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
At KBLA Talk 1580, we do Black history every single day. In fact, as the only Black talk radio station west of the Mississippi, we are Black history. Our annual Black History Month luncheon is fast approaching, and we want to be sure to give you ample time to get your company, organization, church, or group to join us at this year's celebration on the last day of the month, Thursday, February 29th at noon. Last year, we honored iconic local Black media personalities, including Pat Harvey, Jim Hill, Mark Brown, Beverly White, Sandy Banks, and Pat Prescott, and raised $20,000 in scholarships. This year, we're honoring Black Hollywood creatives who have used their artistic genius as climate justice champions. This year's luncheon, we will be showcasing and sharing their inspiring work on our big screen, plus a scrumptious meal, live music, great company, and lots of fun with your favorite KBLA Talk 1580 hosts. So contact us today at info@smileyAudiomedia.com or call 323-290-4690. That's info@smileyAudiomedia.com or call 323-290-4690. We hope to see you Thursday, February 29th as we close out Black History Month At KBLA Talk 1580, we've got your black.
KBLA Talk 1580 is the exclusive media sponsor of this light of ours, activist photographers of the Civil Rights Movement, a dynamic new exhibition on view now at the Skirball Cultural Center in Los Angeles. This light of ours showcases more than 150 photos taken by movement insiders from diverse backgrounds that reveal the vital work undertaken by a broad coalition of organizers and everyday people whose collective action changed America. This light of ours is one of 3 temporary exhibitions currently on view at the Skirball, which together explore issues related to civil rights, immigration, and pluralism. Tickets and more information for all 3 exhibitions are available at skirball.org. That's skirball.org, SKIRBALL.org. COVID-19 renter protections are ending for City of Los Angeles tenants. Know your rights and these 3 facts. February 1st is the deadline to pay rental arrears for rent owed from October 1st, 2021 to January 31st, 2023. Residential tenants cannot be evicted without a reason or just cause. You have 5 days to respond to an eviction notice from the court. Learn more at housing.lacity.org. That's housing.lacity.org. Be informed.
We are back, and we are talking about the really disturbing story involving the suicide of Dr. Candia Bailey. She was the VP of Student Affairs at Lincoln University, which is an HBCU in Missouri. Sherman Bond, the president of the Lincoln University Alumni Association, who has called for the resignation of the university president over the bullying allegations of Dr. Bailey, is joining us, as well as Dr. Julianne Malvo, who is a former president of an HBCU, Bennett College. We were able to obtain a copy of the January 8th letter that Dr. Bailey wrote, circulated, asked her friends to share widely. Many, like Mr. Bond, didn't know that this January 8th letter was in fact a suicide note. And we can't read the entire letter, but some of the passages from the letter, she said, and she being Dr. Bailey, said she experienced months of harassment, bullying, and differential treatment from her white colleagues while working under Mosley and his administrative leadership. She said, I couldn't even finish a meeting because you didn't hear me. She's talking to Mosley. I left in tears. You intentionally harassed and bullied me and got satisfaction from sitting back to determine how you would ensure I failed as an employee and proud alumna. She said that she was never made aware of concerns about her performance until a November 2023 performance review and was never given an action plan to address the concerns afterward. Those are some of the allegations made against Dr. Mosley in this, what we now know to be the suicide note of 49-year-old Dr. Bailey, who took her life on that same day that she circulated that letter. Mr. Bond, thank you for speaking out. Thank you for calling for the resignation of this president. And Dr. Malvo, herself, an African-American woman who has been the president of an HBCU, a noted author, an economist, has asked the question, how did John Mosley become the president of this HBCU, particularly given his lack of academic background?
I guess one of the observations I might want to share with you, you can go ahead and call me doctor. I have a terminal degree, although it's not in front of my name. I've gone through that process, and Dr. Malvo, don't worry about me. I'm real thick-skinned. I think
I did want to apologize to you because I misspoke, so I do apologize.
But I think the echo of what you said is pretty much what I'm asking too. But I was asking the same question. As the president, I felt that when he was hired, that was just unbelievable. And in the context of what you're saying in terms of the cultural differences in terms of what people said. But Mr. Paisley's position was that this was a strategy. See, one of the things we hadn't done and had experienced in Missouri is we hadn't experienced the fact that we had not received our land grant funding as University of Missouri would always receive theirs. And there were about 3 or 4 presidents that came before Mosley. And this is the irony of it. You had Dr. Rome, Dr. Mahoney, and one other professor, and well, Dr. I'm forgetting their names. They're not coming to me right now. The last professor, last president, those 4 presidents, they did not receive all of the land grant funding. This person came in and they gave him the funding.
Were those other presidents Black?
Yeah.
So previously, Lincoln University had Black presidents, wasn't able to get his land grant funding. So the board of trustees essentially said, let's hire this white guy as a strategy to help us get our land grant funding. And you're saying on that point, it worked because when Mosley came in, Lincoln University got its land grant funding.
Well, you can draw that conclusion from the word strategy. And that's what I did. And I wrote a letter at that time entitled "The Price Was Too High," because what I did is I articulated the position of what the HBC platform was about. And I differentiated between that and the state-based institutions, and those are Ivy League institutions, and articulated how the space that as most people don't realize that's the African American space. That space is sacred. That space where I believe, and I articulated my sense that I was able to identify, find myself, grow, and become who I am. I went from being a Negro to a Black man to an African American, and I come out of that era going through that, coming from through the 70s and 80s, and you emerge, and that is where that's our space. I didn't choose to go. I graduated from Lincoln in 80 and 81. I also got my doctorate at Clark Atlanta University, so I am an HBCU graduate. My wife went to Spelman. My son graduated from Lincoln University. My daughter-in-law graduated from Lincoln University. And I'm the challenge with me, and they have with me, is that, and I give back. I've sent hundreds of students to Lincoln University. I am a financial contributor to Lincoln University. I've supported the band. I supported the football team. I've supported many endeavors throughout the years, for the last 27 years. Dr. Henson was the first president who really came back, and then it was Dr. Mahoney, and then it was Dr. Rome, and then it was Dr.
Let me ask you this, Dr. Bond. I don't want to run out of time. How much is that land grant worth? Let's get that on the record, and then tell us what the status of John Mosley is, because I've read some reports that he has been placed on administrative leave.
Well, the actual amount of land grant, I could not tell you specifically what it is, but I think we received somewhere around $16 million in that year, that period when he first came in. But the thing is about the HBCU, it's not filtering out to African Americans. It's like Mizzou is taking care of the Eurocentric population, or let me just put it in example. Mizzou is taking care of the white people. Lincoln was supposed to take care of the Black people. It's supposed to have been developing the farmers. It's supposed to have been developing the agriculture and building capacities for African Americans to be self-sufficient and self-sustaining. The funds now at Lincoln, it seems as if, go directly to white people. So you got two platforms of land grants, but the beneficiary appears to be European Americans, white people.
So,
If I
so
could just interrupt for a
understanding that,
second.
where is that? Hold on a second, Dr. Melvin. I want to know what's the status of John Mosley. You
John
called for his
Moses,
resignation.
the status of John Moses that there's supposedly be conducting an independent investigation into all matters relating. I'm not necessarily into the personnel argument. I'm into the institutional argument. I'm into the image of the institution. I'm into the damage that's being done by this particular visibility. I'm interested in how we can still remain and still sustain our institution and regain some sense of connection to the institution. So, but he's on leave, and where that goes, I asked in my letter when I wrote for a resolution. I also asked for him to be a change in the office of the presidency. So I just think that's the only way the institution can heal. It's the only way it can go forward. It can't go forward. The students don't want it. The alumni don't want it. And it's really just it's time to move on.
When we come forward, Dr. Melville, I want to ask you, as the president of a HBCU, former president, this whole issue of funding and why a Black institution like Lincoln University would feel the need to have to hire someone like this that doesn't meet seemingly the criteria to be a university president anywhere, simply to try to get funding that otherwise should be available to them without having to compromise any of its hiring principles. Stay with us. KBLA Talk 1580.
Listening to Areva Martin in real time on KBLA Talk 1580.
What's up? I'm Danelle Riley, FAMU alumni and creator of the HBCU Culture Shop. I am so proud of my new partnership with Black Beyond Measure and Target. They help me elevate community pride with my HBCU designs and continue to support Black creators and entrepreneurs with Target HBCU challenges, scholarship programs, and campus collaborations. Let's come together this homecoming season and beyond. Shop my brand and discover other Black-owned products at target.com/Black Beyond Measure.
Cover California is a free service from the state that's already helped millions of people like you get and pay for health insurance. With financial help to lower the cost of health coverage, you could get a quality health plan for less than $10 a month. Every plan covers preventive care, doctor visits, emergency care, and more. If you have questions, we're here to help every step of the way. Cover California, this way to health insurance. Enroll by January 31st at coveredca.com.
KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA Talk 1580 reminding you that we keep us safe. Pro Football Hall of Famer and urban peace pioneer Jim Brown believed in just that. So he founded the AmeriCAN Foundation for Social Change in 1988, focusing on at-risk and high-risk youth in underserved schools and juvenile detention facilities, as well as adult incarceration and reentry initiatives. The core of the AmeriCAN program is its 15-chapter life skills curriculum. Mastery of these skills allows individuals to meet their academic potential, conform their behavior to acceptable societal standards, and improve the quality of their lives by equipping them with what they need to confidently and successfully contribute to society. Today, the foundation is led by its president, Monique Brown, who has been actively involved in the organization for more than 25 years. The AmeriCAN Foundation continues its work in memory of its founder, actor, philanthropist, and NFL legend, Jim Brown. To get involved or make a donation, please visit AmeriCANCommunity.partners. That's AmeriCANCommunity.partners. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
The KBLA Talk 1580. Talk radio. That's music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580.
We are back and we are talking with the president of the Lincoln University Alumni Association and Dr. Julianne Malvo, who is the former president of Bennett College. We're talking about this horrific story of 49-year-old Dr. Candida Bond, who was the vice president of student affairs at Lincoln University, one of the HBCUs, one of the only HBCU in the state of Missouri. She lost her life by suicide on January 8th. She left a suicide note outlining in great detail the harassment and bullying that she received at the hands of the President John Mosley, who has now been placed on administrative leave. Thank you, Dr. Bond, for stepping up and calling for the investigation and leading the actions that led to Mosley being placed on leave. We know that there's a memorial for Dr. Bailey that is going to happen on Saturday. So I just want the three of us and all of my listeners and viewers just take a moment to quiet ourselves in a moment of silence to recognize the life that was lost of this beautiful scholar. Again, thank you, Dr. Bond. Dr. Malvo, I want you to weigh in here. You've been a president at a HBCU. We know that they suffer from, financial issues, don't get the kind of finances that that their counterparts get. We see this big gift today, $100 million to Spelman. It was the largest single gift, not only to Spelman, but to any HBCU college or university. That's kind of shocking. That's shocking when you think about Harvard with a $50 billion endowment. Even a school like St. Louis University, $1.5 billion endowment. Why are HBCUs still struggling to be adequately financed?
Well, Areva, we have to put this in the context of anti-Blackness. Is really where it is located. People don't give to HBCUs. People still, even some of us don't give to HBCUs, which is also a tragedy. And when we look at some of our HBCUs, alumni giving rates at your Harvard, 90%. At Howard University, below 20%. And that's the mother lode of HBCU land. Dr. Janetta Cole, was able to get the Bennett alumni giving rate up to about 30%. I pushed up a little more to about 35. Spelman has a reasonable, but it's not above 50%. So part of it is internal. What are we doing? Part of it is external. We don't attract those huge grants like that. And so many HBCU presidents, myself included, we want to have a diverse board because white folks have more wealth than we do. The woman who gave that great gift, and we're very grateful for that gift, it probably took them years to cultivate her to the point that she was able to give that gift, because that's part of what donor cultivation is about, part of the president's job. I guess some misguided soul at Lincoln thought if they got a white boy to be the president, he would be better at donor cultivation. But when the brother talks about the land grant money, we're talking about anti-Blackness. Often this money goes to the state legislature. So if you look at, for example, Maryland, the state of Maryland sued the HBCUs in Maryland sued the legislature to get a more equal distribution. And they were able to get not what they thought they should have from their calculations, but better than what they did have. We've seen in Mississippi the same thing, lawsuits saying that the state universities in Mississippi, Alcorn and some of the others, were systematically underfunded. And so the funding issue really gets back to anti-Blackness. I can't tell you how many times in my life people have said to me, well, why do we still need HBCUs? And there is an answer to that. In fact, first of all, we admit our kids who need a bridge. They don't have to have a 4.0 GPA. We get them to the point where they have a 4.0 GPA. So we admit our kids who sometimes need a break. Also, we're culturally resonant. And I think that's really important. This fellow, this Mosley, does not seem to have been even slightly culturally resonant. And as I said, when I read into Dr. Bonnie's situation, it really totally breaks my heart. Malcolm X once said, the Black woman is the most neglected and disrespected on the planet. And this is what you see here. She hadn't been there long enough to prove herself. long enough to be put on any kind. You give somebody a year. You know, she hadn't been there. She'd been there months, not a year. And they already put her on, I think they put her on paid leave or suspended. The details are very murky, but obviously it hit her at her core. And when you look at her record, her track record, she'd been doing a good job at other universities. So what happened? And that's a real question. So what happened? Did she just come and spaz out? I don't think so. I think that she was under enormous pressure. And as I said, the student affairs job is one of the hardest jobs on campus, because if you really have students who are needy, you try to help them. You know, you have students who don't have enough money, who they didn't get enough financial aid, who their parents aren't able to help, who have too many loans. You could go down the list, and student affairs are the ones who stand in the gap. All of her colleagues talk about how amazing she was. So my question is, what's wrong with that president? But from my perspective, it's just my opinion. I'm not there, never been there. Oh yeah, I spoke there once a bazillion years ago in the 90s. But he was inept, over his head, and he did not know how to manage people. Evidence of that, 3 Black women being terminated in a very short period of time. People not even given a year. You give someone a year in a new job. If at the end of the year they don't work, during the summertime, not in the middle of the during academic year, during the summertime you have a chat. Do you like it here? Are you happy? Do you want to go? And then you make that possible. And there are ways to make it possible with dignity. You don't evict somebody from their campus apartment. I mean, that's
well, you know, I want to jump in here because I think one of the things that you speak of, which to me speaks volume in terms of his lack of ability, his lack of ability to nurture, his lack of ability to build capacity. One of the things about leadership requires you to take the people under you and lift them up to drive them. If you're a vice president, both the provost academics or a vice president of student affairs, the president's role is to elevating you. And then one of the things that's implied in this, there was a question or concern that he's had for two of the vice president that they wanted his job. Here's the catch. They should want his job. You're as vice president, you're supposed to want to be the president, either at that university or another. That's your next step up. That's the next level in which you ascend to. You move out from student affairs, from provost into the leadership role at another institution or the institution that you're in. And my job as the president is to ensure that I help you develop the skills across the entire spectrum in order for you to succeed. That becomes mentoring. How can you mentor
but let me stop you, Dr. Bond.
Even want to be a part?
All that's true, but we can't gloss over what Dr. Malvo said, which is the anti-Blackness, and some of the things that we know Dr. Bailey complained about was not only harassment, but differential treatment from her white colleagues while working under Mosley. So you're making the assumption that Mosley had the capacity to see her as someone that was deserving of that kind of mentorship and that kind of cultivation and nurturing. But if Mosley has racial animus towards her and the other 3 women that were dismissed, he would have never deemed them worthy, which we know that is the basic, premise of white supremacy and of anti-Blackness, is that Black people aren't smart enough, we're not good enough, and we're not worthy of that kind of leadership cultivation that you've described. And that's what's so troubling to me about this story is, was he even in a place? Did he have the capacity to do that as it relates to a Black woman? Or did he other her from the beginning?
It seems to me that this man was so over his head, he had no business in that leadership position. Again, my brother, I'm not going to pick on you again, but I would ask this, what role do the alums have? Because I know at Bennett, my alums were extraordinarily strong. At one time I tried to find somebody, the alums rolled up and they said, oh no, she's an alum, you can't do that. How much power did the alums have in all of this?
Well, I think one of the things that you're seeing with the alums now is for us that we're coalescing around this particular engagement. I think what the board of curators and the institution had done was taking us for granted and kind of like forced us in and said, this is what we're going to live with. And in all fairness, we trying to be politically correct, accepting something that we don't agree with, many of us don't agree with. And that was the decision. We tried to push back as much as we could with dignity. And now it's just complete outrage. He got to go.
Yeah. Now we have a woman, a 49-year-old woman, and I can't say it enough, 49-year-old scholar, Dr. Antoinette Bonnie Candia Bailey is dead. And she blames this on John Mosley, the president, former president or current president on leave of Lincoln University. I'm sorry, we are out of time. Such a horrifying story. But thank you, Dr. Bond, for giving us so many of those details that have not been reported out in the media. And thank you, Dr. Malvo, for your perspective on this. Next voice that you hear will be Robin Ayers in the Raw Report right here on KBLA Talk 1580. Stay with us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, such a hard story. Such a hard story. Thanks, Doc. I'll be